Board of Commissioners meeting, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up, we have public participation. You're welcome to come up and speak tonight on the agenda or any other item. You will have a second opportunity to speak tonight before each and every vote that the Board of Commissioners makes tonight. Any public participation? Okay, seeing none. The Board of Commissioners met in executive session preceding this Board of Commissioners meeting tonight, December 5th. All commissioners were present with the exception of Commissioner John Nagel. Matters of personnel and litigation were discussed. We have the approval of the minutes for the Board of Commissioners meeting for November 28th, 2011.
Move that we approve.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? I have one edit. I realized late. Under old business, it says the Rock Slope received a $10,000 grant. Should read, Commissioner Fisher asked if we can buy wildflowers. Dave Lay will confirm, but he believes that the grant was extended until June. So it just didn't say who asked the question. That's the only change I have. Okay. Any public comment on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor with the modification say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain. Motion carries 5-0 with one abstention. And next up we have a motion to confirm the appointment of Kevin Kachansky as Community Development Director. Kevin comes to us as a recommendation from the Township Manager, Bob Zinkowski. Kevin has over 11 years experience in the industry, has worked as everything from code inspector to a planner, and has worked on plan review and various inspection work. So I'd like to move to appoint.
For the confirmation, you're going to move the confirmation of the appointment.
Yeah, I move to confirm the appointment of Kevin Kachansky as Community Development Director.
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment? Any staff comment? None? Okay.
No comment.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Welcome aboard, Kevin.
Thank you.
Kevin, I think we already have a long list of things that need to be looked at, so welcome aboard. All right, at this point, we have applications for waiver of room rental fees. The first one is the Radnor page. It's a free college admissions education series for the Radnorshire room. Mr. Zinkowski, do you want to give us any background on this?
There's no objection from the administration on this. As you can see, their request is to provide information for residents of Radnor for a free public service here for, I believe it is for college fees and how to approach those for seminars for residents.
Bob, is there going to be advertising there?
Pardon?
Will they have advertising available there?
I believe they will. College admissions educational series. And there's no charge for that either.
Yeah, but I could see a college application or something, but if there's a paid-for service available at the back that's an advertisement, I'm not sure that I'm totally comfortable with that.
I've been to these before. It's more advice and education and strategies on what colleges to apply for, how to write your essay, you know.
No, like advertisement at the back of the room for MJ test prep or anything like that?
Mm-mm.
I'll move the approval of the waiver.
Okay. I'll second that. Any further board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The second waiver is from the League of Women Voters.
Move the approval.
Any board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. That's it. Committee reports, Finance and Audit, Commissioner Higgins. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, I jumped ahead, sorry. I see Carl over there saying, shooting darts at me.
Yeah.
I want to invite Carl up. He's the chairman of the CARFAC, the Citizens Audit Review and Finance Advisory Committee, and I appreciate you for holding on. Sorry for the late start tonight.
No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. Good evening. My name's Carl Bupp. I'm a resident of St. David's. I live on Ravenscliff Road. I'm also the chair of the Radnor Township CARFAC Committee. I want to thank the commissioners for giving the CARFAC time on the agenda this evening to talk about the proposed 2012 budget. Other CARFAC committee members here with me this evening are Joe Ellis, Jerry Linden, and Laurent Chardonnay. Before I speak to the proposed 2012 budget, I wanted to provide the commissioners a brief update on CARFAC committee activities since our first CARFAC meeting in July. We've held 8 meetings to date and have monthly meetings scheduled through May of next year. The focus of our initial meetings has been on educating ourselves on the township processes and procedures and meeting key participants, including the outside auditors. To focus our efforts going forward, we've established 4 working groups to allow us to take a deeper look at key areas. The 4 working groups are audit, planning, IT financial systems, and financial operations. Unfortunately, we started a bit late this year and missed the major audit and planning activities initiated in calendar year 2011. But in 2012, we expect to make contributions to many activities, including the 2011 audit and the 2013 budget. With regards to the 2011 audit, so far we've met with the township auditors about the 2011 audit work plan and have made recommendations to the administration about how to remediate the deficiencies identified by the auditors. With regards to the 2013 plan, we've developed a 5-year planning model which we have provided to the administration. Unfortunately, we were a little too late to have an impact on the 2012 budget cycle with this 5-year planning model, but this will be one of the inputs of the CARFAC into the 2013 budget discussions scheduled to begin in January 2012. The IT and financial operations working groups will begin to get traction in the first half of 2012. At our CARFAC meeting last Tuesday night, we met with Bill White and reviewed the proposed 2012 budget. I'd like to note that Bill has been forthcoming and open about the details behind the budget numbers, and we thank him for the extra effort he has put forth in answering our questions. After meeting with Bill and doing some additional review and analysis, CARFAC wanted to make 3 points to the Board of Commissioners about the 2012 budget. First, the proposed 2012 operating budget is fundamentally sound. It's thorough and detailed and includes 12 pages of line item compensation detail, which is exceptional, probably more than even public companies. The budget provides for a 3% compensation increase for staff, returning township contributions to community organizations to 2010 levels, a 6.5% increase in health care premium costs, and an expected $475,000 increase in the RHM Sewer Authority fees. The proposed budget provides for all these items through a combination of targeted headcount and expense reductions, as well as an increase in employee contributions to health care expense and a proposed 3% increase in the real estate tax mill rate. In summary, the proposed 2012 budget addresses all these operating items in a thoughtful manner. However, my second point is that the unfunded portion of the 2012 capital plan is an area of concern. In version 2.0 of the 2012 plan, there's a $1.2 million shortfall in the capital funding plan. Remedying this will require either allocating additional dollars from the 2011 year-end fund balance, reducing proposed capital spending through deferred maintenance, reducing other operating expenses, increasing taxes beyond the 3% proposed, or a combination of all of the above. There is a proposed prioritization method for distribution of any excess fund balances being put forth by the administrative staff, which will be discussed later this evening. the CARFAC recommends that all current year obligations, both operating capital, be funded prior to distribution of any fund balances to long-term obligations like compensated absences, OPEB, and pension liabilities. Third, with regard to the 2012 proposed budget tax increase and expense plan, the CARFAC recommends the board consider a 2012 budget with a 3% tax increase and an operating expense increase equal to approximately half of the tax increase. Although not technically correct, I will call it a 1.5% operating expense increase. A 1.5% operating expense increase could be realized through deferral of start dates for the new rental housing inspector, part-time code inspector budget, replacement police officer, as well as other replacement hires. In addition, a reduction in the budgeted expenditure for the land evaluation analysis project from the current level of $65,000 could be realized by refining the scope of the effort. The combination of the delayed starts and reduced spending could generate a savings of approximately $190,000. We used the Township manager's recommendation in his memo dated November 18th as a roadmap to achieving this $190,000 reduction. However, the administration or the commissioners may have some alternative means to achieve this budget expense reduction. In addition to these savings, we recommend the commissioners task the administration to find an additional $190,000 in savings throughout calendar year 2012 to make operating spending flat year over year. We believe these additional savings could be generated through a combination of enhanced 511 tax realization and continued expense management. The additional $190,000 in operating expense savings and revenue realization should not be included in the approved budget, but rather should be a target for the administration. We believe the combination of a modest tax increase with a lower operating expense increase will set a precedent for building reserves for capital and long-term obligations, which will be part of the 2013 budget process starting in January. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I wanted to extend an open invitation to all the commissioners and residents of Radnor to attend our monthly CARFAC meetings, which are noted on the Radnor Township website. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them now.
Carl, I want to thank you on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. Thank you and all of the members of the CARFAC committee for the hard work that you've done already just in the partial year, and also for the attention to the detail that you're giving the financial aspects of the township. I was invited in, as you know, I was invited in to sit and just hear my thoughts on what types of issues we're dealing with on the commissioner level. And I do welcome other commissioners to come in and meet with the CARFAC, as well as all the other boards and commissions for that matter. So thank you again for that opportunity. I appreciate the recommendations. My only comment that I'll say is I recognize the rental housing inspector and the part-time code inspector budget are new hires, but those two positions are supposedly offset entirely by the fees in which we collect on the rental housing licenses. So they seem to be low-hanging fruit, easy to see because they're new. But if we're going to cut positions like that, then we really should look across the board at all positions within the township rather than just those two.
They're not cuts. They're not hires. There's a difference.
Well, we're just proposing a delay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Difference of opinion, obviously, between Commissioner Higgins and myself. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that if we were to just make a financial decision of how to save money, we could do that, but it's never that easy. For instance, we have a number of police officers that plan to retire in the next couple of years, and we'll have to fund the hiring of new officers regardless of whether we want to or not. We will need to backfill some of those positions. Maybe not all, but probably at least some. That said, you know, the point of delaying hiring is a good way to save money. We've done that over the last year we didn't purposefully delay, but we ultimately did not hire as quickly as we thought we would certain positions. So the intended effect is the same. But I think in general, Why is the CARFAC, do you have any thoughts on, you talk about the effect of cutting this new spending as treating it as a 1.5% operating tax increase. Why not just say we need a 1.5% tax increase to cover the true cost of operations? Is it the same, or is it different, or?
As we looked at the plan, and quite candidly, we were behind in the process. Next year we'll be much more involved with the administration and looking at the plan as it's put together, the budget as it's put together. But what we looked at is, and came to a conclusion after meeting with Bill, was there's an unfunded capital plan that's identified as 1.2 million. Is it 1.2 million? Is it 600,000? Is it 1.8 million? If you look at the 5-year capital plan, it was our assessment that I'm not sure that has been rigorously scrubbed. However, I understand that's one of the agenda items next January, as the board's going to go through a more thorough review. We looked at that and said that, along with other obligations indicated the township needed to start a process where they could build up some reserves. I think there was discussion at the last board meeting to do that, and it's our proposal or recommendation. We're an advisory group. We're not elected. We're not paid. We're volunteer citizens of Radnor, saying it's our recommendation that what you do is raise the taxes 3%. It managed the spending to increase to half of that. We gave you a possible alternative, deferring some of that hiring, some of the start dates. I think the land evaluation analysis project is critical. It needs to be done, but the scope of that really needs to be evaluated, and they need to look to see if they can spend less than $65,000. I've heard some of the proposals have come in significantly more than that, but I think the administration could take a crack at that and see if they can cut some of that cost to get the information they need for that discussion next year, particularly about space, facilities, and within the township, so that it can be an informed discussion. So we're not saying don't do it. We're just saying cut back some of that spending. And all those items, I watched and many of us watched the proceeds last week, and there's a lot of emotion, particularly around the rental housing inspector. We think that's a good idea. It's just perhaps there's a way to look at that to probably save some money next year. Understanding that that has long-term implications for the following year, because you'll have that person full-time. We're not saying don't do it. We're saying why don't you delay it just a bit. And there could be some other things. There's the year-end fund balance. There's some other items that I think the administration's working on. So that's really the genesis of it, Commissioner Fisher. We felt that optimally, in an optimal world, you'd be able to raise taxes and cut costs, but that's not realistic. So we put forth something that we felt was a reasonable, a doable proposal, and we also said task the staff to find some additional savings. Not that they're spendthrifts, they're not doing that, but task them to see if they can find other opportunities, and oftentimes they can and will, because I think it's quite good of the township to, this budget includes raises for all the employees. Now, not all employees may receive them this year, but that's good. And so it would be good to see the administration come back with some additional findings. So,
okay. Any other questions from the board?
Well, I want to echo John's thoughts of gratitude for this group. I know you've been working diligently, and you will continue to do so, and we so appreciate your input. I wouldn't mind if you would elaborate on your recommendation in this little memo about satisfying with the surplus out of our fund balance. You're recommending satisfying our capital needs first, and then moving on to our other long-term liabilities. And I just want to hear some of the thinking behind that.
Well, that was an area for discussion within our group, and we felt that the capital is probably the most immediate need. I mean, the compensated absences could potentially be a need, but we felt that the capital funding was the most near-term need. Longer term, I think and that's going to happen next year, is a full review of all the long-term obligations facing the township, and I think you need to look at those collectively, and probably this budget cycle may not be the right time to do that. So we were, recommending that that be done next year as part of that full review that's scheduled for the 12 months.
More a question of kind of what items are in crisis mode and we really need to fund. So if in January when we go through our capital budget and it turns out it's not really 1.2, then maybe that would adjust those numbers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We didn't spend time going through
Right.
the 2.4 million. And,
Okay. Well, again, thank you. Thank you all for all the time you're putting in and for your very helpful advice to us.
Yes, thank you also.
All right. Great. Thank you very much.
So Bob, do you think the recommendation or challenge, I guess is the better way of phrasing it, to find an additional approximately 200,000 savings is achievable?
I know we spoke last time at the meeting about some of the delayed starts, which I concur with the CARFAC group. So that's something that we will go to work at. And next Monday, since this is a regular occasion here, that we'll be meeting every Monday, which is good. Hopefully that's a trend moving through all next year. But I think this is something that we'll work on and come back to the board on next Monday when the budget's up for its
Just
public hearing.
understand,
and
if I
have to
understand,
put the
Carl, if I'm
plan.
understanding it right, it's you're actually proposing 380,000, 190. You've specifically identified a mechanism to do that with the delays and the land evaluation, and then there's another 190 that you sort of left out as a challenge to go find it.
Well, yes. To answer your question, yes. But we actually think that may be difficult, but I think perhaps they could find it throughout the year as they learn about things. They've identified things in the budget that are contingency, plus minus, how much snow, how much rain, how many disasters are going to be there. Is there opportunity to find that? I also think that we've got some smart people in the administration. They may figure some things out throughout the year that they could throw into that pool. But the allocated budget would include 190,000 in increased expense budget.
In essence, for the last couple of years, that is really what has happened. In a sense, our staff has scrubbed, they've done a great job of cutting back in expenses, and we've had these unexpected surpluses that we are now able to earmark or hoping to earmark towards long-term liability. So it's really asking them to continue what they've been doing and hopefully achieving another surplus next year that we can earmark.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And reporting on that. I know that the reporting's been improved, the monthly reporting budget versus actual.
Right.
Reporting that, identifying that, and raising that and bringing it up to the commissioners and the community's
Yeah,
awareness.
that's a
because
good point.
They have done a good job.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you again. All right, we're going to head into committee reports. Commissioner Higgins, Finance and Audit.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is to schedule bills payable, item 2011. The list I have in front of me says 12A, the agenda says 11B. I have a feeling it's 12A, right, Bill?
12A would be
Yeah, okay.
the correct
So the
one.
agenda is inaccurate. It's probably a typo that's left over. For a grand total of $523,342.46. And the bills have been approved by the department heads and verified by the finance department are within the budgetary limits we've imposed for this fiscal year. So I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any board comment? Any abstentions? Don't see any. Oh, good. Any public comment on schedule of bills payable 2011-12A?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do have one thing if I could. I apologize, I don't have the documentation in front of me. There was a situation where a resident had accidentally paid a sewer bill twice as a result of a delay in our rapid deposit system. I would like, if it's okay with the board, to have the authority to issue that refund check, being that we're, the person outlaid the cash twice already. It doesn't seem fair to make them wait another week before they get an opportunity to be reimbursed. It's not included in this information here. It came up late last week. As soon as we have the documentation, I can forward it to the board, and you'll have full documentation on it. It's in the range of about $200 and some. But we'd like to issue that refund check tomorrow, if that's okay
If we
with
can,
the
I'd give Bob the discretion to authorize.
I'll move the approval. a second.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to keep notes.
You need a secretary.
Yeah, Commissioner Higgins did. All right, so let's vote on, I mean, this is not really an amendment. Can we do these as separate motions?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so let's just vote on that authorization to issue the refund. We'll vote on that first. Any public comment on that? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And then on the schedule of bills payable, 2011-12A, that was moved and seconded. Any public comment on the payments? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
The next item on the agenda is Resolution 2011-152 to engage Larson Allen for the 2011 audit for a fee not to exceed $37,760 with an additional allowance of a fee of $10,000 should the township be subject to a single federal audit, which, if I remember reading this correctly, Bill, would only occur if we accepted more than $500,000 in federal funds. And is that a guarantee that that would happen, or is that a potential it would happen if we succeed?
It's only a potential, and it would only be applicable if we actually receive the money. It's purely on a cash basis. So if we've accepted a grant that exceeds that amount, but the money hasn't been deposited yet, that does not count.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Board comment?
Well, I had a question about, I think our charter says that after 3 years, we're obliged to bid it out. Is that right?
The charter has that language, but
Yeah.
there's some confusion with the 2008 year, because that audit was substantially complete when Larson Allen was engaged, and the initial work they did coming in was to reconstruct that audit.
So this would be year 3 then, and
So
then
this would
next
basically
year,
be the third-
we'll
yes.
have to bid it out?
Yes.
Okay.
Any public comment?
Well, I have one other question. Did our CARFAC have a chance to review this contract?
The audit working group did, in fact, and that's what was referred to earlier as the
Right.
CARFAC meeting with the auditors, going through the engagement letter.
Okay.
In addition to the letter itself, but putting together a list of deadlines and the requirement of information and who's required to prepare the information and when that's due by. So, yes, they have been actively engaged
Okay.
in this so far.
And this meets their satisfaction?
At this point, I think the process and the end result is a little bit more what they're looking at, but
Okay.
yes.
Okay, great.
If
Thanks.
I could speak for them.
All right, public comment on Resolution 2011-152. Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Next item on the agenda, I don't know if it's Bob or Bill is going to walk us through the item, but it's a discussion on the proposed / budgeted 2012 ending fund balance, how to distribute any of that across a variety of options, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Correct.
Sure. And Mr. Chairman, I'll let Bill step through this, but this is in response to the Board of Commissioners discussion last week. So what we wanted to do is respond quickly back to the board in regards to this and work with Bill, and Bill's put together some information and kind of some criteria to follow here in regards to this, so that hopefully the board will come to some agreement here this evening, and then as part of this come back as a resolution at the next meeting. So this way, when the budget's up for consideration by the board, you'd actually have this by resolution. You'd be able to adopt however you'd want to see these recommendations take place.
Thank you. Well, I'll step to the table as the starting point. And as the year has progressed, and for those who have been watching the monthly financial reports, it's been discussed a little bit in these meetings as well, but the township's revenues have been performing a little bit better this year than we had originally expected. At this point, it seems realistic that our ending fund balance in the general fund will exceed that of our target percentage of 15%. And I did this analysis based on 15% of expenditures based on the passage of the resolution at the last meeting. So the first difference in the 2011 forecasted number the ending fund balance estimate. That is based on worksheets that I have. So if you're trying to reconcile that back to what's in the budget, you won't. That's, I think, one of the amendments to the budget document that was requested that'll be incorporated in the final version. So we're, again, this is forecasted. Forecasted to end 2011 with the $5,337,074. 15% of our general fund expenditures, which would be the policy target, would be $4,165,769, with a difference of just shy of $1.2 million, as the table indicates. So it seemed prudent, given the conversation that took place at the last meeting, and given the priority that these discussions are going to have in the early part of next year, to start putting a framework together for allocating these dollars. We elected to move forward with that with any 2011 ending fund balance because, for example, the compensated absence liability, we assigned a 40% allocation to that. The intention there is to immediately set aside enough to cover any anticipated costs that may come in with regard to the police officers. So that's why the highest priority was given to that liability. Then we worked down from there based on, again, the immediacy of funding, with the 30% being capital funding contributions. And that would be in addition to what the board in prior years had adopted in terms of the general fund transfers. And then finally, with the other post-employment and pension, 15%, and that was more along the lines of identifying that there is a need there and dollars need to start being set aside for that, more than it was to satisfy the liabilities that are out there. So those are the lowest percentages in this memorandum, but we're certainly not trying to imply that they're the least important. It's just in terms of the immediacy of the funding that may be needed. Those are the more long-term, whereas the compensated absences and capital are a little more short-term. So that was the analysis that we went through for 2011. Then for 2012, the estimated ending fund balance was adjusted, assuming that the excess in 11 is distributed to the different areas. So if that's not going to match exactly what's in the budget either, because it assumes that those dollars are now set aside and not part of the fund balance available for spending in 2012. But basically for 11 and 12 then, just keeping that same priority as we work through all the discussion items in the first quarter of next year with these four items specifically. This would serve as the starting block for that. It would set aside some funds immediately for as they exist at the end of 11. Then coupled with the conversations that we're scheduled to have early in 12, it would at least have a framework to start building from. So that was the intention behind the memorandum and the recommendation.
Can I react and ask a question to your choice of wording? You say set aside. Was that creation of a separate fund? Is that put in an escrow? Does that mean not spend it? What do you mean by set aside?
Well, it might mean something a little different for each of the liabilities. For example, the capital funding, there is a fund in place for that. So set aside for that one would be simply taking the funds and transferring them over to the capital improvement fund. For compensated absences and the other post-employment benefits, retirement benefits, or OPEB, probably the most prudent way to account for that would be the establishment of the fund, a fund to account for that.
Would you escrow it?
Well, by establishing a fund and separating it and segregating it out into its own special fund, it's basically doing the same thing.
It's not, though, because we move money back and forth between funds. If it's put in escrow, you can't get your hands on it.
Well, maybe I'll add to that. Is I think that would be a good decision for the board to make, so that you don't have that ability to say, let's reach into a fund to do something else. I think if you're looking for that straight recommendation, I would believe you'd want to escrow these monies and restrict that ability to go in and move monies out.
Just
for
cost you,
certain reasons.
there's an administration fee associated usually with escrow accounts as well.
Yeah, well, I would only add that with our two pension funds that we have for the civilian and the police, those aren't governmental funds. Those are agency funds, which means we don't have access to them directly, and we cannot transfer money in and out. So the board, through the establishment of the fund, can set up the rules. And if it's a non-governmental fund, it limits the ability to transfer in and out. But that is for consideration with any governmental fund, like the capital fund. The board does have discretion on that. So,
But don't you want to have some flexibility to move funds around based upon what is occurring in reality in the following year?
well, ideally, the plan would be a long-term plan. So, monies allocated to be set aside for those purposes basically would be, the funding source would be kind of a one-way street. And if you find that you're overfunding it, having a long-term plan would allow for recognizing that hopefully in advance, and you could start adjusting how much you're setting aside annually to address the
As opposed to moving
overfunding.
it from one fund to another.
Right, because I
Yes.
think I agree with Commissioner Higgins and Mr. Zankowski that limiting the ability to do that's the best way to safeguard that those funds are used specifically for that purpose.
And it's really determining on an annualized basis whether or not you want to fund that particular fund a little bit more or less, depending upon what's occurring.
Correct. And with
Plus
regard
the-
to the
makes
OPEB,
sense.
it's actuarially calculated, so you have a long-term approach to the funding.
Good.
Plus, we still have the 15%
Yes.
to deal with the fluctuations. This is to deal with it in the fortunate instance we are right now, which looks like we're going to be above the 15%, and some proposals to deal with things that we haven't been able to address because of other funding issues. So I think it's a nice, reasonable start for a discussion.
So didn't the auditors, though, indicate that level should be set much higher than 15%, something on the order of 50% to cover the short-term fluctuations? So if we put it into something that can't be moved, then we lose that capability to use that money for short-term fluctuations.
Yes, the auditors at their presentation to the board did have a recommendation of I think the specific wording was 6 months worth of expenditure activity.
50%, correct?
Our fund balance has been 15%. The resolution that we adopted, that the board adopted at the last meeting, was a target of 15%, which is consistent with what the Government Finance Officers Association recommends as being reasonable. So if we wanted to be ultra safe in terms of how much cash we had to account for fluctuations, 6 months is probably on that end of being ultra conservative. But in terms of being in line with where the GFOA makes their recommendation and what the township has done in the past, the 15% seems reasonable.
Bill, at our last meeting, we passed Resolution 2011-152, which gave new definitions to our fund balance. Would it be enough to, and I'm not that familiar with the terminology that we're using yet, but it seems that the committed fund balance is the terminology we would use to kind of earmark these excesses for specific long-term liabilities. But if we do, is that done, and the question I have is that done by resolution by the board, and that can be undone by resolution by the board? What about the viability of something like what I've read is a sinking fund? Mm-hmm. This is essentially, we have fund accounting, that's our books, but a sinking fund is literally a separate account that if you put money in, generally you don't transfer it back. Is that something you would recommend for these extraordinary liabilities that we're facing?
Yes, and if I understood correctly, the first question had regarded the definitions of restricted, the fund balance definition, and the accounting for fund balances is done on two different levels. There's the full accrual, and then there's the modified accrual. So under the full accrual, maybe I'll answer the second question now and saying yes, a sinking fund is not too dissimilar from establishing a whole separate OPEB fund. similar to how we have pension funds. It's segregated for a specific purpose. Monies can only be deposited into and spent for that specific purpose. It's a non-governmental fund, which means that the board doesn't have access to it outside of what its purpose was. So there's safeguards built in against transferring money in and out. So it serves as a sinking fund for that purpose. Then on the financial statements, any of the special revenue funds or non-governmental funds are going to be, they're basically committed fund balances, because that fund exists for a very specific purpose. So any fund balance that's left in that fund is going to fall under that committed definition.
Once we transfer them out, they're no longer fund, it's no longer fund balance money. Now it's been transferred to capital, and now it's capital money.
True, but at the end of the year, any residual balances that are in there
Right.
show up on our financial
Right.
statements as fund balances.
You can transfer it back, unless you put in a restriction of some sort.
So as part of this budget adoption that we will do at our next meeting, why would it be in our best interest just to go ahead and say, you know what, we see a $1.1 million surplus above the 15%. If you round it down to $1 million, we're looking at about $400,000 for the compensated absences, assuming this schedule that you put together, $400,000 for compensated absences, $300,000 for capital funding, and so on. Would you recommend to the board that we go ahead and just get this done and get this? We're going to have our meetings next year. We're going to spend a fair amount of time on each topic. But as far as setting this money aside, should we go ahead and do it as part of the budget so that money is, in fact, somewhat, I'll just use the word earmarked, but knowing that the commissioners still have full reign to, through a resolution, to change that. But I think the point I'm making here is we have this extra money. Would you recommend that we try to set that aside as part of the budget process?
From my perspective,
Both of
yes.
you, yes.
My perspective would be yes, because I think it's the acknowledgement of the board that you have liabilities that are out there that you have to address. So I think this is a good first start of recognizing that, knowing that you've got a recommendation from CARFAC, being that over the next 12 months you're going to be looking at a lot of these issues here and starting to recognize and be aware that some mechanisms have to be put in place of how you're going to start addressing these on the long term, that you're not going to write all these issues over short term. This is long term, that acknowledging it. So I think it would be something that would be good that the board begins to recognize and put these types of policies in place.
Well, this gives us a discipline. The problem in the past is if you have this money in your fund balance and somebody wants to come in and have you contribute $250,000 for a turf field, well, we have money available. Well, we really don't, because we have all these other liabilities, so we have to start funding those. So we want to get this money out of the system so that if you need $150,000 for a floor for the Bryn Mawr Fire Company, you can't look to this. This is funding, this is done. We move it out. And hopefully we will continue to increase revenues and cut expenses, and this fund balance will continue to grow, and we continue to put it in capital. And the goal is not to go out every 7 years and borrow another $6-7 million like we've done for the last 30-40 years. Not to borrow money for capital, just pay as you go. And these other things have to be funded. We've been paying as we go, but some years are going to be leaner than others, and it'd be nice to continue to contribute these in good times so that we have plenty of money.
Bob, can I ask a question on your answer, just to clarify? To use John's words, the earmarking of it, I understood that, but are you suggesting that at the next meeting we go as far as to potentially escrow it, or are you saying we earmark it, and then if we decide to escrow, we have that conversation as part of the more dedicated meeting?
Yes, I would think by resolution, this way you'd establish it, so the only way you could undo those monies would be by resolution to pull it back. And then as that discussion moving forward is you actually establish those escrow accounts where the money would go into. And again,
Okay.
that would be some recommendation we'd look at.
Unless
from
any
the
other
CARFAC
commissioner
group as
has
well.
issue with this, I would suggest that staff prepare a resolution for the next
Well,
meeting.
I still have some questions. So.
Yes. I'm trying to get this done.
I mean, I'm fully behind this. I'm fully behind moving ahead with this. I'm thrilled to see that you got this together so quickly, and thank you for doing that and bringing it to us. My biggest question was, I'm not I'm not clear what the difference between the absence liabilities and the, the general OPEB. I mean, I always thought that absence liabilities were part of OPEB. So if you could just explain what that difference is.
Sure. The compensated absences is the liability that has accrued for the payout of accrued but unused leave time.
Okay.
The difference, the other post-employment benefit liability are for those retirees and future retirees, the cost of providing health care and other contractual benefits such as life insurance. So that's the difference. The compensated absences is limited to accrued but unused leave time, which
Okay.
is usually, it's a liability that you carry on the books up until the point when they actually retire. The liability is satisfied by a payment. And then the health care, life insurance, and other contractual obligations that we have for retirees now falls on OPEB.
And so the OPEB, the liability to us is long-term, trickles through time. Those payouts for absences are big payouts when they retire, more immediate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that explains why we will be facing quickly, according to this, some big payouts if we lose, 7 officers or whatnot.
Within the next 2 years, we'll be
Right.
looking at that.
Okay.
And the
Well, that
township
makes-
has been funding those situations on a pay-as-you-go. As they've come up, it's been paid. So there hasn't been any kind of formalized plan of setting funds aside.
So
Okay.
to reiterate, Bob, if you don't, unless any board member has a different opinion, please prepare a resolution for the next meeting for December 12th. And you can use the schedule that you've presented here. You can use the schedule that's been presented here, but of course, if anyone has any differing opinion, we can hash that out during the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, what we might do is what was presented tonight by CARFAC, we'll also take that in regarding the capital equipment, take that into consideration too, and then put that together as well.
Great, thank you.
I assume this will be done on a percentage basis, since we...
Yes, absolutely.
That's it for finance and audit.
Thank you. Well, any public comment on that discussion that we just had? We didn't actually vote, but no, seeing none. Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Commissioner Curley, Community Development.
Yes. I motion that we approve Resolution 2011-53, approving final plans of Eastern University to construct a new 39,570 square foot student union building.
Second?
Board comment?
Yeah, I have some comments and some questions. Representatives of Eastern could come up. First question is, there's a number here that is $780,000, which Eastern would be required to put up in terms of a letter of credit to do the intersectional improvements at Eagle and King of Prussia Road at some point in time.
That's correct.
How was the number of $780,000 arrived at?
Basically, the budget that's estimated this time is $1.4 million for those intersectional improvements, and so this was approximately half, actually a little more than half of that number.
And where would we get the remainder of the money to do those improvements?
The discussion, and I can speak to some of this because I prepared the resolution, and the shortfall would have to be from other sources, other projects that I believe will be coming through in the next couple of years in that part of the township. Eastern's plan after this is to build on the west campus, so we tried to time the actual intersection improvements and the construction to when that construction begins. Eastern would actually do the work, assuming the shortfall is committed from other sources. It's my understanding there's at least 2 or 3 other projects that I don't really want to get into in terms of details, but they all would impact that particular intersection. in that part of the township. So,
Well, do the other projects touch upon the intersection?
yes. I mean, for example, is Cabrini. There's a project proposed at Cabrini. Any other project in that area, Hank, along Lancaster Avenue, we would look for contributions to make up that shortfall. But you don't have the funds. Eastern's stepping forward and making a substantial commitment. The rest of the funds would have to come from other sources, or not preferably, possibly the township.
Well, it would seem to me that we'd have a pretty difficult time imposing as a condition any project as far removed as Lancaster Avenue for this particular intersection.
I think it was for maybe
I'm
John,
sorry,
maybe
King of Prussia.
Road.
I mean
Yeah,
King of Prussia,
King of Prussia.
not Lancaster Avenue. Other projects along King of Prussia.
Well, even if they're not touching upon the intersection, I still think you'd have some difficulty from a legal standpoint imposing that as a condition. Don't you agree?
Well, there's imposing and there's asking.
I understand there's asking, and you can ask all you want, but that doesn't mean you're going to get it.
Well, but if you have any projects on King of Prussia that are putting traffic through this intersection, maybe existing buildings that want to expand that have never done any road improvements along their road frontage, this is a very easy project that is needed in that area. I don't know whether you have the attachment to the resolution, but there's a rough drawing of the work that's estimated along both Cabrini's frontage and along you don't have the.
All we got was the resolution itself. We didn't get Exhibit A,
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, John or Nick.
and I'd actually like to see that,
Yeah, we had
so we know
discussion-
what we're talking
Yeah, we had a
about.
discussion before about whether it was going to be all eastern land that was affected or whether any land across the street was going to be impacted.
Karen, perhaps you want, I know we presented this to the board previously, and Karen, if you want to explain. This is,
Yeah, we,
right. We have submitted one to PennDOT, so I think Karen's showing the one here that was submitted to PennDOT.
Yes, the plan that you see before you is the plan that's been submitted to PennDOT. We made a submission November 18th. This is, we were originally proposing northbound left turn lane, which was requested. PennDOT also wanted a southbound left turn lane, and to optimize the intersection, we are proposing a right-hand turn lane on Eagle Road.
Am I understanding the shaded area is the impacted area? So that what's looking to me like gray, and that's all
Yes.
Cabrini and eastern property, so no residents' property is being impacted?
No, the only impact on a residential property is this corner that will need some right-of-way to put the new signal in. That's the only impact. That we worked with the east line and worked everything west.
And that's
So-
existing right away.
So, yeah, I understand
Right.
all that stuff, but
Yeah,
to a layman, the signal means you want to put a pole that has either the
Right,
power
there'll
or
be
the light
a
on
new
it.
signal on that
Okay.
one corner. So the dark shaded lines are the new asphalt that will be laid, and then the lighter shade is an overlay of the asphalt.
so the plan is designed to facilitate left-turning movements both northbound and southbound when you get to Eagle on the one side and Pine Tree Road on the other.
Correct.
What kind of levels of service are they operating at right now?
That's the traffic engineer.
Just if you know real quickly.
Currently,
F.
F
That's my
for
recollection.
both movements?
You have to get to the mic.
Well, currently, the left turn movements, it's graded on approach basis, since there aren't separate left turn lanes. But just to give you an example, in the evening, the PM peak hour, the northbound approach is a failing condition. Northbound will be headed, and the left turn movement headed towards either Eastern or Cabrini.
How about southbound?
Southbound, the southbound approach is operating at level of service B during the PM peak hour.
I think in the morning it's probably operating at a worse.
Again, in the morning, northbound is the worst of the two conditions. It's a level of service D. But
Really?
we would anticipate, obviously, that condition to approve with these left turn lanes.
Okay. It seemed to me, if I read this thing correctly, that there's a sunset provision on the funding. That is, if it's not used by a certain date, then the money goes back to, actually, a letter of credit, I suppose, would expire at that particular point.
Correct. Either 2 years, within 2 years of the occupancy of the West Campus project, which is not even before the township yet in terms of a land development plan, or 2016, whichever is later.
Okay. And I wasn't sure, because I didn't have the opportunity to review the earlier resolution, preliminary plan resolution 11-69, but is the driveway from the main drive of the campus over to the athletic facilities, is that still on the drawing boards?
Yes, you mean the loop road?
Yes.
Yes,
Which you have to go across the creek, of course,
correct.
and you had to apply to DEP for a permit. Where does that process stand at this point?
We're currently have to, looking to make a submission to the Army Corps before we make the final submission to DEP. And that's for the Army Corps to take a look at the bridge that's going to go across the stream and see if they have jurisdiction.
All right, and John or Dave, have you been monitoring this process to be sure that they are complying with the resolution?
We will be. Excuse me. I mean, as Karen indicated, they're just submitting now to the Army Corps. So once they've made that submission, they'll copy us on it, and we'll do a review on it.
Commissioner Mahoney, that's in the preliminary plan approval resolution, paragraph 8. Assuming the board approves the final plan now, all those conditions will be put into a development agreement. They'll start posting the money for that, and then the money for this intersection, and whatever else they have to establish for their improvements on the project itself. And then, as David said, that'll start their development process, the construction and everything else, all the permits that go with it. They'll finalize their linens, we'll record the linens, and the ball's off, and they're off and running on this project.
The next question I have is...
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, Hank. I am going to have to recuse myself. I just realized and just confirmed that I cannot participate in this discussion. So sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to excuse myself and recuse myself from this vote because my husband's
Commissioner Schaefer's recusal noted.
Okay. In paragraph 1B sub 4, there's 80,000 of the 780 is being earmarked for the Shimoni Road sidewalk, which was, SABIC, of course, was subject to a resolution several years ago where we approved the construction of a dormitory. And I was wondering, why is it that this particular project, which was approved many years ago, is now being tied to this one and the 780,000 LOC?
Well, Mr. Cornelia, you want to answer that question?
Hank, you may recall at the time the estimate for that project was approximately $50,000. Eastern does not want to get tied up in, is it 50, is it 60, is it 45, is it 70? So the resolution says the township may use the money for that purpose. They can either use it for that purpose or they can use it for the intersectional improvements.
Well, it also says Eastern shall not be responsible for any further funding for the installation of sidewalks on Shimoni Road.
That's correct.
And I hear what you're saying about what the estimate may have been several years ago. How do we know it's not going to be more than $80,000?
My understanding is this was based on an estimate the township had received. I believe that's where the 80,000 came from.
Dave, do you have any information on that?
I would ask Dave.
Well, I mean, based on our preliminary, review of the site, we came up with an estimate of around $80,000 to complete the work.
Estimate of around 80,000?
Yeah, again, at this point with preliminary engineering, that's what we've come up with.
And my understanding, though, Hank, just so you know, that resolution provided that Eastern would pay for the installation of sidewalks. I believe the estimate includes curbing and things in addition to the sidewalk. So actually, Eastern's paying more here than what they were obligated to pay.
Commissioner Mahoney, I looked at that. I'm familiar with the prior resolution. It wasn't entirely, there wasn't a whole lot of clarity in terms of what that meant, curbs, sidewalks, storm drains, and how much. No one did an estimate at the time. So when we started talking about this intersection improvements, this is Cabrini's request to tie this.
Eastern.
I'm sorry, Eastern's request to tie this into this intersection. The $80,000 our estimate that Dave gave, and it's available now. I don't know when the work would actually be done, but
Excuse me.
At least would be available at the time they post the first sum of money by the end of this year.
So even though the $80,000 is part of the LOC, once the engineering work is completed by Dave, then the money will be available to do the work.
They would come to us and say, post the money. Or
Okay.
we're going to.
Well, we would. What would happen is this requires $200,000 to be posted by the end of the year.
I understand.
80 of that could be designated for the Shimoni sidewalk in the development agreement. So whoever does that work, there would have to be a letter of credit release to pay that contractor that sum of money. We're assuming it's going to be around $80,000.
All right. And the last item I wanted to talk about is that there's a reference here to the West Campus project. And I know for several years the purchase of what I used to call the South Campus of Valley Forge, now the West Campus of Eastern, caused a lot of consternation with the neighbors, and I know certain neighbors had entered into an agreement with Eastern about limiting the type of development, that sort of thing. What is the West Campus project envisioned to be at this particular point? I realize you haven't filed an application yet, but I think it's very important that we have a pretty good understanding before we go forth with this, that we know what kind of an impact that's going to have on the intersection, on the neighborhood, and that sort of thing. So if you can
Hank,
elaborate on that, I'd appreciate it.
They're looking to open West Campus, hopefully for occupancy around the fall of 2015. The initial phase of that would be construction of classroom for graduate type studies. Further down the road, there may be an additional phase which would involve dormitories, again for those graduate type studies, just for the students who are using that campus. It's not for undergrad dormitories or anything of that nature. Also, the proposal includes that any access, except for access along Eagle Road, would be abandoned by Eastern except for emergency access. There's other things also, but basically I think that's the nuts and bolts of it. So we're talking about ingress and egress only from Eagle Road. If you've driven by today, already buffering's taken place. The area is going to be fully fenced in. And as I said, as far as the use is concerned, phase one would be classroom for graduate type studies. Phase two, if phase two is ever done, would be for dormitories for those graduate students.
And you understand, of course, that you're going to have not only restrictions by your agreement with the neighbors that you entered into, but you also are subject to the land development
Absolutely.
Process here at the township, and we're in no way bound by what you agreed with the neighbors.
Fully understood.
Okay.
But we feel that in the land development process, we're going to be in full compliance with both the land development ordinance as well as the zoning ordinance.
And I won't be here to witness that. Other gentlemen behind you will be. But I thank you for clarifying those particular issues.
Hank, you are welcome to attend the meetings as a resident.
Nick, I have a question.
Thank you for that invitation. I'll take it up.
I know you've been in discussion with a few of the neighbors around screening, because, but I don't see anything that is reflective here about screening for the lights. So how do you propose memorializing that so that these individuals
Are
have...
we talking about screening for the loop road?
Yeah, plus I think she's at the back. I don't know. I've got to put my glasses on.
Sure.
But I think I see her back
I'll
there.
call, I know Carl's been in discussion with him, so I'll ask him to.
It's the Sonia's house, or in particular, they're concerned about, based on the increased traffic and the lights shining right into their house. And I know that David's been in some discussions with them, but I don't see anything here that's memorializing that, and I think, you know, they're rightfully concerned that, you know, if this happens 4 or 5 years from now and you know, there's a change in administration, that they don't have anything to rely on. So how do you propose memorializing that such that they have something to say if you don't deliver? Not that I don't expect you to deliver, but, you know, it's just that's a prudent thing for them to request.
We've had preliminary discussions with them, and we've agreed to meet with them now that the leaves have fallen from the trees to see where exactly the impacts would be. As far as memorializing, we would do those remediations as soon as we decide what sort of remediations we would do. I would have done them already if we had a plan together for where exactly we would put plantings and those kinds of things. But it's just as soon as we find the areas that really need to be screened and we can agree on a plan, we'll implement that immediately.
So basically, you'd plant them next spring, or
I wanted to get it in this fall, and hopefully they'll have a chance to establish themselves. The more years that they have to.
So do you think you
grow.
can still get it in? Do you think?
Well, no, I meant by this back fall.
Understand. So we're really probably talking spring, or do you do it in the fall?
More than likely, we do it in the spring before the summer comes. If we can agree on where we should put certain things, we would do it immediately.
I'm sorry, you need a mic, you can't speak from the audience, thanks. The people at home want to hear you.
Hi, Kathy Sonier. I'm in St. David's. Thank you, Kevin, for bringing it up. And we have met with HAFE, and we do appreciate all the work that that he has put forth on this. And so, assuming that we will be able to come to agreement, we have a plan to move forward with HAFE, and as soon as we figure out what the screening is, if they go in the spring, we're great. One of the things I was going to request during public comment is that something that could be part of the development agreement? But, you know, I don't want to sort of jump ship here and pop in too soon, so I can go back and sort of wait my turn.
I think the two.
Turn to John and say, we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest that's in there. We've done that when Villanova came with plans. We even had limitations on sound levels and decibels and lighting and so on. So I would
Better to have it documented in case.
Have someone enlighten me, what are we talking
Where the
about?
loop road is, and to, so deflect lights from.
Once the loop road gets permitted on that,
Is it the new road or the existing road that's the issue?
What street are we trying to
It's
screen?
the top of Cornwall Circle. And what happens is there's a road in Eastern that comes through the properties at the very top of the circle.
Yeah, so it is the new loop road that is part of the final plan.
Okay.
So assuming we are not too late, because you're going to hear from me again during public comment, that is something that we did want to request, is that road is being developed, and we understand, you know, we obviously the plans exist. HAFE is familiar with the plans. We've seen the plans. So assuming we are not successful in our first order of business, which you'll hear from later, then yeah, that's the road that we're talking about. And so if we can get a development agreement around that would be fine.
So what you're anticipating is that cars coming from the athletic parking area
Correct.
towards the pond
Correct.
will actually shine lights up into your neighborhood. I got it. Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
So
Well, before
hold
you go
on, don't.
away, yeah, because
This
if
is
no-
public comment.
If no
at this
commissioner has
point.
any, why don't we let her say
We
what
already
she wants to
have,
say?
unless any other commissioner has questions, you can at least stay in the front.
Sure.
But any other commissioner comment on this?
I have just
Okay, John?
one clarification. The resolution, the heading of the resolution now talks about a 39,570 square foot building. It's actually, I found out tonight, 43,055, 43055 square feet. So that's just one edit to that.
John, in order to put in the the requirements for screening light pollution from the residents, from the neighborhoods. Do we want you to have, do we need to approve this tonight? Can you change this and bring it back to us on the 12th? What's the?
Well, you can modify paragraph 3 where it says that there's going to be a development financial security agreement in a form and manner to be approved by the township solicitor and shall provide for adequate screening of the proposed loop road from Cornwall
Circle. Okay? All right.
Cornwall Circle, from the residences on Cornwall Circle.
I think until we understand the extent of the potential light pollution problem, it probably should just be adequate screening.
Right.
Because I could foresee somebody from Fairview coming along when this thing is being constructed and saying, wait a minute, how did Cornwall get this screening and we didn't? So I think it should be adequate screening, period. And I think that's something, Dave, you could take a look at, couldn't you?
Sure. Again, I mean, I guess if we leave the language, with enough wiggle room in there that it can be reviewed later once the road's in and address it then, yes.
Mr. Keneally is indicating his agreement.
Well, let's identify.
I don't foresee a major issue, hopefully, developing out of this, because I know Eastern's certainly willing to do the adequate screening that neighbors would request. And I know they've been working together on it already, so. And I understand, with pretty good, seems like they have an agreement in principle to some extent already.
Don, Commissioner Curley, would you like to amend your motion?
Well, why don't we wait? Well, let this young lady speak, so in case she has any other thoughts.
Yeah, I just want
Okay.
to make sure that the adequate screening is between the loop road and the residences that would be impacted. So that's where we're talking about putting the screening. Any of the residences between the screening between the residences and the loop road.
That's fine.
So that
It's the loop road.
There's other streets.
They're on Cornwall right now, but Hank's right. I mean, it's possible that
may
people
be
in
others.
Fairview could be affected as well.
It could be Shimoni. It could be Fairview. Could be some of the back yards of the properties. Yeah. I think that's the way you word it.
Is that what John said?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
I did not.
It was to be adequate screening between the loop road and residences.
The existing residences.
Correct.
Correct.
And Dave can get together with your folks and.
Yeah, I guess the question, adequate screening from a lighting standpoint or something of that regards.
Adequate screening sufficient to shield the existing residences from any headlights on the loop road.
What he said.
Or something to that
Yep.
effect.
Sound good to you, Kath?
All right. Can we have this young lady do you have anything to say?
Kathy, you want to come back up?
Thank you. I feel badly. I don't want to interrupt the flow here, but you've already sort of introduced myself, and I do recognize that this is final vote, final approval. My husband and I have been before the board previously on this issue, as well as in front of the Planning Commission, and my husband spoke back, and I guess it was the September Planning Commission where they kind of gave it their final approval to move forward to this stage. As you can kind of tell from the peripheral conversation, our issue is not with the student center, but it's with the loop road. And really what we had put forth in a petition that we had submitted previously was, is there any way that we can decouple the loop road from the student center and make sure that there is adequate conversation around the merits of the placement of the road currently? And the reason why we made this request, and we're still continuing to make this request, albeit we recognize that we may be a little late to the game still, is that, one, the road has nothing to do with the student center. We've met with some of the residents on the western side of campus. We spoke with folks on Fenimore and Fairview, and we understand the concerns and the issues that they have. And in speaking with them, their biggest concern around the traffic patterns is really around the athletic fields and the volume of traffic that has been increasing since they put in the AstroTurf fields. The student center has nothing to do with that traffic flow. And we've went through all the minutes, we've watched planning commissions and board of commission meetings on YouTube just to try and follow the progression of how this road kind of got packaged in with the student center. We're still a little confused with how that happened, but here we are, it is. And we feel like they're apples and oranges. And so through the petition and through the conversation we were able to generate at the last planning commission, all we wanted to raise is, have we done everything we can to make sure that this road is placed in the most appropriate place? We recognize that the university has an issue. They have agreed to close the Fenimore entrance to the university out of goodwill to the neighbors, and that's created a sort of a new problem for themselves to solve. But our point is, this road, is it really the best way to solve it? During the last planning commission, the township engineer, I know he wasn't familiar with some of the alternatives that the Eastern engineers had looked at. And our point is, have we put enough diligence and resources as a township behind the solution? Eastern is private property. We respect that. But it's historic property. It's beautiful property within the township. And we feel like we need to be appropriate stewards of that. And slapping a road where they plan to slap it right now, are we really doing everything we can to make sure we're making the best decision? So our request has been and still continues to be, can we pull that provision out of this plan? They can continue to build the student center, and we can do a better job of making sure that the problem is solved. They've committed to closing the entrance. We're not saying don't do that, but can we find a better solution for the problem? So thank you for the time.
If I could just respond to you. I've been a commissioner in the first ward for 16 years, and Nick will tell you that one of the very first disagreements we had when I came on the board was about Eastern University. And at that particular time, there were two ways to get in and out of the campus. Mm-hmm. That one little place over by the athletic facility and the one on Fairview. Mm-hmm. And it was at that particular time that with an awful lot of negotiations, we got Eastern to put in the road which goes out to Eagle. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, because of that road and all the subsequent building that has been done, the number of students at Eastern has increased. It's become a very popular, very good school, and we think they've been very good neighbors and have been very accommodating. One of the last pieces of the puzzle, which went way back to 16 years ago, was the entrance onto Fenimore, which continues to this very day to be a problem with a lot of students coming up and down what is, as you know, a very narrow residential street, very quiet street normally, but when school is in, there's a lot of traffic there. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you from the discussions I've had with the neighbors over there that they would not like to decouple the road from this particular approval. And it may seem a little unusual to have this coupled with the Student Union Center, but it's no more unusual than the Shimoni Road sidewalk with the dormitory, mm-hmm. Which is on the far corner of the campus. It is done in development, and we appreciate Eastern doing this. So personally, on behalf of the First Ward, sure, I would not like to see that occur.
Mm-hmm. I can appreciate that.
I think that Eastern has done a very good job in exploring various possibilities to get this road across. Years ago, they came back to us when we insisted upon it and said it just can't be done from an engineering standpoint. Obviously, engineering may have advanced, or mm-hmm. Hydrogeology has advanced to the point where it can be done. So I think, given the bodies of water that we see here, this is probably the only way to do it. Also, given the existing fields, the two turf fields that they have installed in the last, 5 years or so. I don't see there's a way to get from the athletic field up Eagle Road by a separate driveway, quite honestly.
Well, I know that the separate driveway issue, we've talked in the last meeting about the ravine and the steepness there, and how that's very difficult, and that there was some conversation around possibility around the side of the gym. I presume it might be perhaps along there, and that might be too narrow. And I guess from a layperson standpoint, we don't have 16 years worth of history, and we do appreciate that this Fenimore Road entrance has been, a bee in many people's bonnets for a long time. We felt like going through all the minutes and how this whole thing came to be, there was more conversation about the number of parking spots on campus and the number of people who attended the so-called swim club than there was about this road. And from a standpoint of just being concerned about the resources and the land parcels in the township, it just felt like we didn't do the diligence. Now, maybe there was background work that we were not privy to through the minutes and the meetings that we witnessed, but from our standpoint, it just felt like it literally was a little piece of congressional pork that got slapped onto the side of this Eastern Student Center. No disrespect intended. I'm just giving you our perspective without having the benefit of some of the background.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So the other alternatives for the road that you explored, there was a different entrance, if I remember right, coming off of Eagle and things like, where did all that land?
We had made all those presentations at the Planning Commission, and I believe we did the last time we were here during preliminary. This really is the best location for the road and has the most to gain. Let me have. This is the overall campus plan, and right now we're looking for the road to come through here, and we feel it's the best way to connect the two campuses, because it allows, if somebody comes in off of Eagle Road, you're literally connecting both campuses. You're connecting it to all the parking available. It's the less impact, whereas the other alternative was one that came down through this way. You're literally only connecting the gym parking lot. The problems here, as we had mentioned before, you have a deep ravine that comes down through here. You have the major electric power lines that come down through here, and you have the steep slopes that come down through here. You have a very narrow passageway to get between the stream and the athletic fields, and you're affecting the riparian buffer as you come down through there. Whereas down through here, we're crossing two streams. However, there are no wetlands that are impacted, and we'll be crossing the stream. This is all, it'll be a bridge over this one and that one. And again, the buses that allow the buses to come in and cross and allow people to come in and park. And if there's no parking over here, they're all with internal on the campus.
The other thing that strikes me, given the anticipated development of the West Campus and the agreement that you have with the neighbors to only have ingress and egress off of Eagle Road, is it makes more sense if you're going from the main campus to the West Campus that you go out onto Eagle Road, because that's where, it's a larger road, certainly larger than Fenimore Fairview, and it just seems to make more sense to put the traffic out on Eagle Road, which is, I think, designed in such a fashion as to handle it.
Yeah, the traffic will be between Eagle Road, between the two campuses. Yeah. That'll be the only commute between the two.
Right. Thank you.
Any further public comment on Resolution 2011-153? Commissioner Curley, would you like to amend your original motion?
Sure. Two amendments, or two, yeah. One is that we modify the header language to indicate 43,055 square feet. And the second is that we add language to paragraph 3 indicating that the applicant shall provide adequate light screening sufficient to shield existing residents from car lights from the proposed loop road, subject to the approval of the solicitor and the township engineer.
Second.
Any board comment on the amendments? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Noting Commissioner Schaefer's recusal and absence from the vote. I'll give Commissioner Schaefer a moment to come back in. All right, thank you, Commissioner Curley. Commissioner Mahoney, Public Safety.
The first item on the agenda is the approval of the Staff Traffic Committee meeting minutes for November 15, 2011, which are before you. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to, but shouldn't we be accepting them?
You're correct.
Is
We are accepting them as opposed to approving them. I'll move to accept the minutes.
Second?
My only comment, the last item, Commissioner Fisher requested a review of cars traveling too fast. During that meeting, staff traffic talked about just using paint to modify that intersection of Lowry's and Conestoga. I thought we came to full resolution on that it would just be looked at from a simple painting operation. It appears here in the minutes that there'll be further review, but I think the review was somewhat, at least of the topic, was completed. The actual design has not been done. So I just want to make a comment on that. I have no further comment. Any other board comment? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
The next item is Resolution 2011-137 regarding authorization for the purchase of 6 radar speed feedback displays for the police department in the amount of $22,575. You have the proposed resolution as well as a memorandum from Superintendent Colarulo to the manager and a breakdown of the bids. Show the 3 bidders submitted bids, and the low bidder was General Highway Products, Inc. Anything to add, Superintendent?
No, that's correct, Commissioner. This was on the agenda a couple of meetings ago. I take responsibility. The figures were not correct at that time. However, these are the correct figures with the lowest bid.
So we switched from Traffic Logic, because I think if I recall correctly, Bill, at that time, Traffic Logic still wasn't the lowest bid. This was a lower bid, but we decided to change to the lower bid.
That's correct, sir. We have the lower bid with an additional software that's going to be added, and it still comes in as the lowest bid.
So the additional software essentially makes the functionality of this one pretty similar to the one that you had advocated for before we withdrew it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Move the approval.
Actually, okay, sorry about that. I thought Commissioner Mahoney had already moved on that. I guess not.
No, I gave him 5 minutes. That's all we get.
Okay, any board comment? I'll just say I'm very happy to see this going through. I hope this will help a lot with the speeding in the neighborhoods throughout the township. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
The next item is the introduction of Ordinance 2011-28, which would rescind Ordinance 1986-05, changing the parking restrictions on the 100 block of Poplar Avenue to 2-hour parking from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., except by permit or on Sunday and holidays. And right now it is 8 a.m. to 12 noon. Any comments, Superintendent?
Commissioner, just to reiterate what you said, this ordinance would increase the length of time parking is restricted to 6 p.m. for the entire 100 block section of Poplar. The reason we're recommending this helps officers enforce parking because we have an issue with wait staff parking in the neighborhood.
I'll move the introduction.
Second?
Board comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Next is the introduction of Ordinance 2011-29 regarding stop signs to be installed on the northwest corner of Harrison Road
Move
at
the
the
introduction.
intersection with Parks Run Lane.
Move the introduction.
Second.
Board comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6 to none.
The next is the introduction of ordinance 2011-31 regarding a handicap parking space at 881 Glenbrook Avenue.
I'm sorry, there were two of those, Hank. Harrison Road had two signs?
Nope, I apologize.
Sorry.
Introduction of ordinance 2011-30 regarding stop signs to be installed on the southwest corner of Harrison Road at
Move
the
the introduction.
intersection with Parks Run.
Board comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6 to none.
Next is introduction of ordinance 2011-31 regarding a handicap parking space at 881 Glenbrook Avenue.
Move the introduction.
Second.
Board comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6 to none.
Next is introduction of ordinance 2011-32, which would amend an earlier ordinance 1987-14 to read permanent parking only from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in Emlyn Tennell Park. I believe it would also change the name of the park from Converse to Emlyn Tennell.
I move to introduce ordinance 2011-32.
Second.
Spengler got it. We need buzzers up here.
I don't
Any
need a
board
buzzer.
comment? I'll just thank staff traffic for working on this issue, and hopefully this will bring some relief to the neighbors. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6 to none.
Next is the introduction of ordinance 2011-33, amending ordinance 1986-27 to read permit parking only 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on Glenbrook Avenue.
Move the introduction.
Second.
Board comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6
Hank,
to
I have
none.
one item here. The Breakfast with Santa has been canceled. They're remodeling the kitchen, so they could not have the Breakfast with Santa Sunday, December 11th from 8 to 12 noon. There's a sign posted outside the firehouse. They're very disappointed. This has been a big fundraiser for them, but they just can't cook breakfast. So Breakfast with Santa is canceled for this year, and hopefully it'll be back next year.
In
And the
lieu of
manager
that-
had nothing to do with this, I know.
In lieu of that, they're going to have it at Bill Spengler's house the same day. Bill's
Yeah.
going to do the cooking.
Yeah, well, you just got me a divorce. Thank you, Hank.
That's it for public safety.
Thank you, Commissioner Mahoney. Commissioner Nagel's not present tonight. I'll take Parks and Recreation, unless anybody else would like to
I'll run it
volunteer.
out.
You want to do that, Bill?
I'll move the approval of Resolution 2011-149, authorization to enter into a contract agreement for the use of gymnasium facilities for the 2011-2012 Radnor Youth Basketball and Volleyball Program with the Woodland School. I need a second.
I'll second it. I have a question, Tammy. Does Woodland use any of our facilities?
They do not.
Okay.
I have a question. Do the fees that we collect cover and offset this cost?
They do, yes.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Any public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6 to none.
I'll move the approval of Resolution 2011-150, authorization to enter into a contract agreement for the use of gymnasium facilities for the 2011-2012 Radnor Youth Basketball season with Hilltop Preparatory School.
I'll second, and Tammy, same question.
Hilltop Preparatory School does not use any
Does
of
not
our
use any of our
facilities.
facilities either.
And we do cover the cost directly with the program fees.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment? So on 2011-150? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6 to none.
And the next thing is authorization for the approval of the Radnor Youth Basketball Scholarships for 2011-2012 program. I move the authorization.
Tammy, can you just tell us the criteria, please?
One of the things that we looked at was types of government assistance through food stamps, whether or not there was a situation where a parent was laid off or currently unemployed, and there was also a narrative portion of each of the submissions as well that we looked at.
Very good. And Bob, you're in support of this? You think this is a necessary
Yes,
item?
yes.
Okay, any public comment on this authorization? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
That's it under Public Parks Recreation. There's nothing under Public Works and Engineering.
Thank you, Commissioner Spengler. I have nothing under Personnel Administration. Commissioner Schaefer, Library. Thank you. Under Public Health, I just have one question. Superintendent Colorulo, you had sent us a memo concerning the stray animal system in Delaware County and what's going on there. Could you just give us a little background on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There was a meeting on Saturday regarding a proposal to build a new facility in Darby Township. Just roughly the cost for the township would be a yearly stipend of $1,200 and then $250 per animal that's taken to that refuge. However, we're looking at an alternative to this. We're working with Dr. Donato and possibly other avenues to retrieve these animals at a lesser cost to the township. We should have a resolution for next Monday's Board of Commissioners meeting.
And I assume, I wasn't able to make that meeting. Did the Delaware County Council explain what type of a shelter that would be? Was that what some people might call a kill shelter, meaning the animals may or may not get adopted? Did they talk about the adoption rates? And
in fact, they sent us a PowerPoint, and I could forward that to you, Commissioner. I do not believe it is a kill shelter. The alternative that we will use in Radnor, it will not be a kill shelter either. The first week, there would be no charge to the township. After that, it would be approximately $26 a day, and after that point, the dogs would be relocated to a refuge where they do not kill.
okay. Well, we look forward to that
Bill,
resolution.
if we don't opt in now and it gets built, would we be able to opt in later, or are we completely excluded? Or have they not even thought that far
Well,
along?
they're asking for an upfront commitment for a 3-year contract. And then after the 3rd-year contract, the fees would go up. I believe if we don't get in now, we would have to wait.
As a point of background, the Delaware County SPCA was providing the service to the township. So when our police officers, on occasion, and I don't think it would occur too often, and Superintendent, you may be able to explain the numbers, but I think it's just a handful a year.
15 to this point this year, Commissioner. 15 dogs were actually taken to the SPCA.
Okay.
Also, logistically, it would take our officers out of service for a minimum of 2 hours to transport this dog to this facility that they want to build.
Right. So there's a lot of resource costs and financial costs. And we were alerted that the SPCA would stop collecting animals back in the summer, and then we were able to negotiate, the county was able to negotiate an extension of that. But the SPCA in Delaware County has gone to what they call a no-kill shelter, meaning their sole purpose is to adopt out animals. And at that time, the Board of Health looked at this issue briefly, and I was contacted by numerous people in the community that are, animal rights folks, and also people that just care a lot about animals and humane treatment of animals. And basically what I got was that we need to come up with a new solution. So it sounds like the county's trying to do something, may or may not be helpful to us, but we need to address this issue because next year we may have 15 animals or so that we need to deal with, and it sounds like you have a solution.
And just one final point, and Township Manager recommended this. We're working with not only Dr. Donato, but Francisvale, and that would be the facility that would hold the dogs longer if the owners do not come to retrieve their pet.
Yes. And the important point here is that and this was explained to me years ago, that when a stray animal is found on the street by our police department, police officers, the animal is held locally for a short period of time, and we try to identify the animal, give homeowners a chance to claim their animal. But at some point, that animal, in this case, would go to Francisvale Homes. And
well, one of the things we've done, we purchased a couple of months ago extra cages that we keep in the Sally Port and the police station. Also, we try to identify with the use of technology whether or not the dog has a laser chip. And if the dog does, that will identify the owner for us. So it's very infrequent that we do have to take a dog actually to the SPCA. Again, 15 times in 1 year, a little more than once a month.
okay. Thank you for the update. I have no further report. Any old business?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just one quick item. Going back to the Finance and Audit, Agenda Item A regarding the disbursement list, I have the exact amount of the refund. So just to button that item up tonight, The amount of the refund is $242.91, which makes the grand total authorized disbursement amount $523,585.37.
Thing, we're set.
Do you need a resolution by us to, no?
No.
Just to, okay, point of clarification. Thank you
I
for
have
the
just
update.
one more announcement to make before we close out. I'd like to re-announce that tomorrow night the Open Space Committee is meeting in the Powys Room from 6 to 7 p.m. The portion of that meeting, the agenda that deals with real estate transactions, will be in executive, but if there's any member of the public that would like to participate or sit in for other items on the agenda, they are welcome to attend.
Thank you. My only old business is that the grant for the rock slope was extended to June of 2012. So we have another 6 months to finish that project up, and I look forward to help from the Garrett Hill Steering Committee to help with that process. So, any other old business? Any new business? Public participation. It's your last chance to say something tonight.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.